Just a few more hours and then the peace and quiet of the Swiss Alps will return to Davos. The many delegates who visit the small town every January to seek solutions to world problems will be gone for another 12 months. As always, this year's World Economic Forum meeting saw no shortage of big issues to discuss. Conversations focused on trade conflicts, climate change, and of course Brexit with its wider-ranging consequences. But many questions remained unanswered.
Chancellor, can Brexit be delayed?
German Chancellor Angela Merkel was among those promoting international cooperation in Davos. Most welcomed her message. Also a veiled rebuttal to US President Donald Trump, who had stayed home due to the US government shutdown. Brazil's new president, Jair Bolsonaro, however, was in Davos, marking his first appearance on the world stage. While international cooperation is likely not one of his favourite topics, he used Davos to try and attract foreign investors. Many of the leaders who normally make the headlines didn't attend the World Economic Forum this year, but most participants seemed not to mind. They came here to talk or do business. And those events don't happen on the big stages anyway, but in the back rooms of the Congress Centre or even on the streets of this little Swiss town.
Let's get more now from our correspondent, Ben Fazulin. Ben, the gathering in Davos is drawing to a close today. Do you think leaders made meaningful progress in addressing the world's most pressing issues?
A very good question. It's very hard to gauge. The chilly winds of isolationism have definitely reached Davos this year. There are deals being done behind doors between companies and countries. Botswana is here for the first time. India's presence grows every year. Definitely Africa and Asia is on the map here amongst investors, and everyone is open for business. But on the global stage and on the center stage here at the conference center, it's a very different picture. We're talking about a trade war, protectionism, Brexit as well, of course. I thought it was very interesting to hear from the former Secretary of State from the United States, John Kerry, who had so much praise for Europe, saying Europe has the highest standard of living and the environment and education, the lowest violence rates, but people are putting it at risk, and he finds that totally incomprehensible. Let's talk about that with economist Arantxa Gonzalez, who is the executive director of the International Trade Center. A hard Brexit is looking more and more likely. What would be the ramifications?
It would have huge consequences, and it would be a huge irresponsibility on the side of governments. It's like in a family, husband and wife, divorce without an agreement. I have not known any such situation which ends happily. So the only thing that should happen now is discard this option from the table and focus on building consensus on any of the other options on the table.
At the same time, a trade war is raging on between the top two economies with no end in sight.
Well, we have the beginnings of perhaps a conversation with the United States and China seated around the table. If they succeed in building a bit of trust between the two of them, then maybe others could join, preferably around the World Trade Organization table, and solve the grievances that they all have. Everybody has grievances about the system of international trade not being up to the standards of the 21st century, and that's fine. But then the answer is sit around the table, find common solutions.
But the whole system, globalization, it's fizzling out.
Well, I think globalization is taking different shapes, and it's taken shape in a much more digital way, and we do not understand how this digital way is working, and certainly we cannot measure it properly, and this is why we have the impression that the world is shrinking, but in reality the interconnection that globalization brings is taking shape, continues to take shape, but in a different way. Today is much more about data exchanges, services, than it's about physical goods, as in the past.
So what are you hoping will be achieved at this World Economic Forum?
Well, last year I left Davos with the impression that there was a bit too much complacency. And I hope that coming out of Davos 2019, the message that governments and businesses get is better managing the risks in 2019, build more resilience to buffer the risks that are already looming on the horizon.
So as German Chancellor Angela Merkel put it, this has all been a wake-up call, the changes we're seeing in perceptions of how the world should be run and how countries interact.
It's exactly what happened in 2018. It was a huge wake-up call. There were huge tensions, not only on the trade side, also on the geopolitical side. And we also saw masses of people protesting for different reasons. Some feel inequality of revenue, some have inequality of opportunities, some simply want to have a voice. What we need to do now is responsibly channel this energy into finding solutions to this world in which we live, much more interconnected, with problems that have reach beyond the nation state, for which we need more international, global, multilateral cooperation.
Arantxa González, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
DW's Ben Fazulin reporting from Davos there, and it is there that billionaire investor George Soros had some strong words for the Chinese president. Mr. Soros called President Xi Jinping the, quote, most dangerous enemy of free societies. Mr. Soros said that China's social credit system would give Mr. Xi total control over his people. Beijing is currently developing a facial recognition system, which Mr. Soros says would enable the government to use algorithms to determine how big a threat an individual poses to the regime. He also said US tech giants like Facebook needed to be reined in for the sake of democracy.